In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a disorder that is 4 times more common than schizophrenia, but hardly anyone has heard about it. And the name of this disorder? Schizotypal personality disorder, which is not only a, personality disorder, but it's also a condition on the schizophrenia spectrum. So today I want to dive in a little deeper into what schizotypal is. Where did it come from? What are the symptoms? And what does it look like in the real world? Those are the questions I'll be answering today. So without further ado, let's go straight to the source material, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, text revision. This book has everything in it that we could possibly need for this video. So while I'm looking it up, I want to let you guys know that I am not a medical professional, I'm not a doctor, and I do not encourage self-diagnosis. I make these videos for informational purposes because I have an interest in mental health conditions, and mental health topics. But at the end of the day, I am just a girl with a bachelor's degree in biology, not psychology, so nothing in this video is medical advice, and please, if you really are concerned about yourself, go see a doctor. They can help you way better than just me talking about this stuff in a video. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get started. So why does schizotypal personality disorder exist as a distinct diagnostic entity? Well, doctors started noticing that relatives of those that had schizophrenia had symptoms that didn't meet full criteria for schizophrenia, didn't have lasting psychosis, but they had impoverished social function, peculiarities of thought, and impaired communication skills. But again, these people, they didn't meet criteria for schizophrenia or any of the other psychotic disorders, and if they did have psychosis, it didn't last very long. So the name of this intermediate schizo phenotype became known as schizotypal personality disorder. So let's dive into the DSM and get down with some facts. To start, schizotypal personality disorder has a lifetime prevalence of just under 4%, with men being affected only slightly more than women. It usually comes about in early adulthood, and it was first introduced in the 3rd edition of the DSM, or the 3rd edition of this book right here. And while it is referenced in the schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders chapter, the criteria can be found under Cluster A personality disorders later on in the book. And really, the disorder itself is dominated by having incredible issues with close relationships. Those with the disorder have distortions of thought and perception and are considered eccentric. The disorder affects their life in many areas, and in order to be diagnosed, someone has to have at least 5 of the following 9 symptoms. And those symptoms can be grouped into 3 key categories: cognitive, perceptual, interpersonal, and disorganized oddness. The first domain of symptoms I'm going to talk about is the cognitive perceptual category, which includes a few things: odd beliefs or magical thinking, unusual perceptions, ideas of reference, and paranoia and suspiciousness. So let's start with odd beliefs or magical thinking. Magical thinking is when someone takes 2 things that aren't related and connects them, even though there's no obvious link. Part of this symptom includes superstitions and a very strong belief in the paranormal. And the thing is, yes, this can happen to anyone at any time, but someone with schizotypal personality disorder, this is their main way of thinking. It happens more often than it doesn't, and there is a pattern. They have to wear the same blue shirt every Thursday or bad things will happen. And don't even think about walking under a ladder. And a big point I want to make here, and really over the course of this whole video, is that these things are incongruent with the person's culture, meaning they're not normal for the culture that the schizotypal person belongs to. Because culture plays a huge role in determining what is and isn't usual, and context is important. But anyway, on with the next symptom. And that symptom is unusual perceptual experiences. The big idea here is that those with the disorder perceive things that others don't. A schizotypal person might think that someone is sitting next to them even though there's no one there. Or they might see the world in a way that almost seems like there's a filter over their eyes. However, it's important to note that while their perceptions may be different, they are not hallucinations. They're having a different perception, not a false sensory experience, which is what's seen in psychotic patients. Now, someone with schizotypal personality disorder can experience short stages of psychosis, but they only last minutes to hours and don't meet the criteria for a full psychotic episode. Ideas of reference is another symptom of schizotypal personality disorder, and this is when someone perceives events to be about them. These kinds of thoughts dominate their way of thinking. And it might not happen every single time, but it happens a lot. The news, circumstances, people in public places, everything is important and meaningful and is all about them. Another example of this is thinking that random events have meaning, as if it's part of someone's destiny. It's important to say that all of these ideas of reference are unrealistic, and none of them count as delusions because the person does not hold them with delusional conviction, meaning that actually the schizotypal person might even be able to be talked out of what they're believing. If they were delusional, that wouldn't happen. And of course, all these ideas of reference are incongruent with the person's culture. Suspiciousness and paranoid ideation is the next symptom, and this is basically just comes across as being suspicious and paranoid of others. And this kind of paranoia is very similar to that found in schizophrenics. Someone who's schizotypal might think that the person they're talking to has a secret ulterior motive, and they might be paranoid that everyone in a room is talking about them behind their backs and plotting and scheming bad things. And yes, this can happen to people on the street, but the schizotypal would also feel this with people that are closer to them, like family members. And it doesn't fade. This is just a way of life for them. So now we're moving on to the second domain of symptoms, and this is the interpersonal category. And this includes a lack of close friends, intense social anxiety, and an inappropriate or restricted affect. So now we talk about relationships with others, which is a key problem with schizotypal personality disorder. The symptom is a lack of close friends besides first-degree relatives. Someone with the disorder has a difficulty in making and keeping close relationships, which can be due to the many things I've already mentioned. Suspiciousness and paranoia play a major role because how can someone get close to someone that they think is after them? And this disconnectedness actually can cause a large amount of distress for the person with the disorder because they feel that they're different. They feel that lack of relatability. And even if they do get close to someone, they will inevitably withdraw. And there's usually immense discomfort involved. Someone with schizotypal personality disorder might actually complain about their lack of close relationships, and they won't even realize that it's their symptoms that are causing all the issues. Excessive and intense social anxiety is another symptom in this domain. A lot of people with schizotypal personality disorder feel like they don't fit in, and let's be real, given what I've mentioned in this video so far, there's good reason for them to feel that way. However, there are reasons for this anxiety. Paranoid fears shape how they feel about others, and that suspiciousness plays a role as well. And the key thing here is that the anxiety that's associated with these social situations, the more the person gets to know someone new, the worse the anxiety gets. So instead of getting better, they just get more anxious over time. So as a result, few, if any, close relationships are formed. Now we get into the mood side. One of the many symptoms is a restricted, inappropriate, or just downright non-existent affect. And affect is just a fancy word for mood. So their emotions and moods are inappropriate for the situation, which can hamper social interaction, or they can have constricted emotions entirely, which means that instead of feeling joy in a situation, they just feel numb. So when others are happy or sad because of something, the schizotypal just doesn't feel anything at all. And someone with schizotypal personality disorder might realize that what they're feeling doesn't fit the situation, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still feeling what they're feeling in the moment, or lack of feeling what they're feeling in the moment. And the final domain of symptoms is the disorganized oddness side. And this includes a few things: odd thinking and speech, behavior that is odd, eccentric, or peculiar. And this category also crosses over with the previous one, including that affective problem we talked about a second ago. So those issues with mood are also included here. So one of the more interesting symptoms of this disorder is odd thinking or speech. And this is where that eccentric nature kicks in. People with the disorder might speak in unusual ways, such as talking in an accent that doesn't quite exist, or adding complicated and unnecessary words that aren't commonly used. And they might talk in vague, metaphorical, grand ways. And there's sometimes a miscommunication between the schizotypal person and others because this way of talking and thinking and communicating, well, it's sometimes hard to understand what the schizotypal person is saying, and that makes it hard for them to relate to others and build those lasting connections that they just don't usually have. And besides the other symptoms, there's also behavior that is odd, peculiar, or eccentric. And really this comes down to the schizotypal person dressing and acting in ways that are not considered normal in their culture. So for example, this can mean that someone would wear clothes that are too big or too small, or have mismatched patterns or stains, etc. The The key here is that they're doing things that are different from the cultural norms around them, and again, context is important. And someone with the disorder might have strange mannerisms, meaning that instead of, say, looking someone directly in the eyes, they would constantly look over someone's shoulder instead. And like I said before, the mood issues, the inappropriate moods or lack of moods is also included in this category. Now, of course, even with all of those symptoms, it cannot be diagnosed if the person meets criteria for schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, autism spectrum disorder, or any mood disorder with psychotic features. And of course, all of these symptoms that I just listed actually can be found in the prodromal phase of schizophrenia, which is the first stage of a schizophrenic episode. And because of this, people with schizotypal personality disorder might go on to develop schizophrenia or another psychotic disorder. And social deficits, odd speech, and behavior, a lot of these things are found in diagnosed schizophrenics. But in schizotypal personality disorder, they're just not as severe. So naturally, you're probably starting to see why schizotypal personality disorder is on the schizophrenia spectrum. And the specific numbers about how many schizotypals go on to develop schizophrenia, it varied from paper to paper and source to source, so I'm just gonna say that sometimes it happens. But speaking of schizophrenia, a lot of the cognitive deficits that schizophrenics experience, like issues in episodic memory and working memory, are also found in those with schizotypal. And of course, you're probably wondering, how on earth is schizotypal personality disorder treated? And the answer is primarily therapy. Sometimes lower doses of antipsychotics are given, and they do help, in addition to anxiety and depression medications. But at its core, it's a personality disorder. So talk therapy and developing coping skills there is the best way to treat it. But unfortunately, this disorder is difficult to diagnose, manage, and treat, because there's a lot about it that we just don't know, and that can really be said for any of the disorders on the schizophrenia spectrum. But anyways, that's all for today's video. All of the sources I used in this video are linked in the description box down below, so feel free to use it as a springboard to do your own research. So have you heard of this strange yet unique psychiatric disorder? Did you learn something? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I am reachable on Instagram and Twitter. I am at SchizoKitzo across both platforms. And I had an absolute blast researching and making this video, so I hope you enjoyed it. And this is where I say thank you for joining me and making the uncomfortable comfortable. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.